my colleague from the NFL Media Group, who dropped a fascinating nugget about Eric Weddle and so much more back here on the Rich Eisen Show. Ian Rapoport at Rap Sheet. How are you, Ian?
All right, Rich. Ask me the question.
What's the question? What do you got? What is it?
Most important question that you just went through, right? Only thing that people want to know. Ask me the question.
What's the state of Eric Weddle's beard?
Sources tell me
Yes.
that Eric Weddle's beard is roughly 2 inches long.
Oh.
And I would say 2 centimeters thick. So
wow.
I would not describe it as like one of those like Jim the Anvil Neidhart hanging beard, but it is fairly bushy. And look, I mean, today is January something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
12.
And we got about a month before the Super Bowl. So like, if you take it where it is now, you project it forward through the Super Bowl, I think we could get like a real, like, you know, bushy type beard action, like, you know, some of the classics. I think he's in a good spot and something that expect this to continue to grow.
Well, classics are like, you know, Rutherford B. Hayes, Cough Drop Brothers, or obviously Ryan Fitzpatrick. That's what we're talking about in terms of epic beards.
What about Kiesel? I feel like Kiesel had a good one.
Okay, Brett Kiesel, very good. I mean, please, my God. It's like it was like Dan Haggerty.
The redheaded dude from Game of Thrones.
That's true.
He had a good one.
Oh, yeah.
Tormund
Giants. All right. So
never watched Game of Thrones.
I gotta. You know what, man? I'll tell you. Les Snead is he's just constantly like. There's no. Is he ever inside the box? Because it's crazy. So how did this come about? It just came about because Fuller's hurt, and why not Weddle, right? Is that the way this happened?
Fuller's hurt, and Taylor Rapp is in concussion protocol. This really came together, I think, yesterday. It's funny. Do you follow Jalen Ramsey on Twitter?
Sure. I missed what he said though. So
he tweeted he at 1:30 a.m. Jalen Ramsey has an ear to the personnel department of the Los Angeles Rams.
Sure.
He has been ahead of every crazy move they've made with weird cryptic tweets. I also follow my good friend Jalen Ramsey on Twitter, and I will now be following him even more closely because when he tweets cryptic stuff, crazy things happen. And I would say this, like, I listened to your clip of Weddle, and yes, he is done preparing for the season. He is done doing that long grind. That's not what this is. This is preparing for one game and then maybe another game and then maybe another game. This is very different. And, how many snaps will he play? Will he play 60 snaps? I doubt it. But he's going to be there helping, and I imagine it will be beneficial.
I love it. And I was reading out a list, too, of players who are going to be back in time for the playoffs. J.J. Watt expected to be back in that very game. Derrick Henry the week after. And then there's a trio of Packers. Bakhtiari played 20-some-odd snaps in Week 18. Jair Alexander and Zadarius Smith today, right? Designated for a turn. Are we going to see all those Packers back, do you think, in a week and a half?
Also, some other significant news for the Green Bay Packers.
Yes.
Aaron Rodgers is practicing. Today is Wednesday, and Aaron Rodgers is practicing. So not only do you get David Bakhtiari back, you get Jair Alexander probably back, you get Zadarius Smith probably back, which is massive. I mean, it'll be like as a third down rusher, but that's okay. I mean, that's basically what Bob Miller is.
Right.
He has dramatic impact. And then Aaron Rodgers is practicing. And the reason I say that is because Rodgers hasn't practiced on a Wednesday in like a couple months. So this indicates that his little toe, his poor little toe, is as healthy as it has been. So everyone is beaten up, and the Packers are the opposite.
Ian Rapoport here on the Rich Eisen Show. What happened with the Giants' deliberation to chat with Joe Judge on a Monday and then decide on Tuesday, we're done? What happened there?
Yeah, it was interesting because, I feel like they probably knew on Monday. From what I understand, those conversations weren't like, tell me your plans for next year. I mean, he told them his plans for next year, but it wasn't the kind of thing where, like, they sat down and plotted out what was going to happen. Like, they talked about various other topics, but it didn't sound like they spent a ton of time on like the actual plans for next year. That to me means they probably knew. And I think he left his team and his coaches and his players with plans for the off season. But I talked to a couple of players yesterday, and they felt like something was up because the meetings were still going on. And the more you wait, the more it makes you think that something may happen. And for me, it's interesting. Like, I've known Joe Judge for more than 10 years. I've known him since he was a 20-year-old special teamer at Mississippi State. He is a very good football coach, and he got his team to play extremely hard and to believe in him, and I think what the players said was real. The results weren't good enough. And there's a lot of reasons why. An offensive coordinator that he really didn't want, the general manager he certainly didn't want, a third-string quarterback. But at the end, nobody cared about any of that. It was just were the results good enough or not, and they clearly were not.
Well, I'll just say, too, Ian, it's just weird comments like players from outside the organization are still trying to come back in. That's how good the culture is, despite what we're seeing. Calling Washington clown show also. The pointing out when the Patriots made the Super Bowl in the year where they beat the Rams, they all thought they were getting fired midseason. All you got to do look at the team was 7-2 midseason, and it's just like all the Patriots writers were like, that's a lie. Like, that is just not true. And then the surrender formation. That doesn't sound like the person you just described. You know what I'm saying, Ian?
Yeah, and you're right. And so, a couple things. First of all, I have no doubt that Belichick put the fear of God in those assistants, during that year that he's talking about. It's not reality to say it. So, was Joe Judge himself nervous that he was getting fired based on the way Belichick was treating them when they were losing? Probably. But that was also probably not reality. I think the lack of awareness, there's a lot of things that go into being a head coach. There's a lot of things. And especially for the inexperienced guys or the guys who haven't stepped out of New England, they do seem to, a lot of them, share a trait of not having a really good sense of what's happening around them and shutting it all out and just putting your head down and working. Because in New England, that's what you do. You focus on your job. You do your job. Belichick handles the rest. You do your job well. You become a good candidate, and you interview, and you get a head coaching job. But sometimes you do so without the global awareness necessary to be a head coach. And I think of all the things that hurt Joe Judge, that was a big part of it.
Is that what happened with Brian Flores down in Miami? What happened there, Ian?
Yeah, I think with Flores it was a little different. That was more of a, Flores doesn't need to prove anything as a football coach. With Tua as his quarterback, he won 9 and 10 games. I mean, that is impressive, right? I mean, that's some really good coaching. And, yes, he coaches hard, and he works with his staff hard. The people who are devoted to him are insanely devoted to him, and he is a very good football coach. This really came down to the owner feeling like he needed to pick one with, Greer and Flores' relationship deteriorating. And, this has been going on for about a month. So at one point I thought one was in trouble, then the other. Then I probably thought late last week that this was going to be okay. But, my world, Rich, and a lot of the things that we hear, unless I'm talking to Stephen Ross or unless I'm talking to an owner, you're not really sure what's going to go on because one person makes a decision, or in the Giants' case, 2 people. So I thought it was going to be okay, but in the end, Stephen Ross decided that, he needed to make a decision that these 2 couldn't work well together, and he chose the GM, not the head coach.
Oh, man. Why? What happened there? What did happen? Do you know?
Yeah. You look at the ways that it broke down. I mean, obviously there was the failed Deshaun Watson trade, and I believe everybody was on the same page with that. Everyone in the building was on the same page.
You do. Like that, Brian, because, again, that was 2 weeks before the season. Charles Robinson of Yahoo, remember that report? And then getting permission to talk to him.
I was at Travers watching the horses, and I was like, "Can I please just enjoy it?"
That's your life, man. So, but then getting permission to actually speak with him, and then doing so in the middle of a season, with all of the legal stuff, which is the way that I guess we all refer to it, that's still out there. So they were all on board. It's not like, was it a Tua thing that that one guy didn't want him and the other guy did, or was it a Tua thing? Is that what this is too, or no?
I feel like Flores definitely wanted him. I think Greer was on board. Was he as all in as everyone? Like, I don't know. And now of course he has Tua. But when they tried to make the trade, they were all on board until Stephen Ross said, "I'm not doing this until the legal situation is wrapped up." But that, the desire to trade for a quarterback and then not eventually doing it definitely creates problems. And then there were, some other, the way things were handled, some other personnel moves. I mean, there's, I think one of the tough things is when you're Brian Flores and you come in, you evaluate the roster, and you say, all right, this guy's not good enough, this guy's not good enough, we need to trade this guy. And there's no way around it, Rich. Like, these are Chris Greer's guys. So, like, that probably is, I'm sure that made it a difficult working atmosphere as well.
Ian Rapoport here on the Rich Eisen Show. Okay, and so you mentioned about a choice that Stephen Ross had to make, felt compelled to make, was forced to make, however you want to phrase it, between his coach and his general manager. He chose the GM over the coach. Is it a choice in Seattle between Russ or Pete Carroll for John Schneider if he is in danger? I don't know why that would be, but I know some Seattle fans are beginning to chafe because that's the way it seems to be. Although, Russ, they got a couple years left of contractual control, and Pete signed through 2025. Could they run it back, or are we off that we're just like it's a choice that they can't coexist anymore? What's going on in Seattle, Ian? There,
I don't think it's a choice. I do think they need to make sure that Jody Allen, the owner, wants all of them there. And this is the problem. This is like what I was talking about with the owner thing. Like when all of us talk about coaches who are safe or on the hot seat or coming back, there's been reports on everyone. I mean, there were reports that Judge was coming back. There's all sorts of reports on these coaching stuff, but like nobody knows what's going to happen in Seattle because, as far as I can tell, nobody's talking to Jody Allen, and that is the voice that matters. And I don't even know that anyone there knows what's going to happen. But I think what it's going to be is not a choice. I think it is going to be are we on the same page moving forward with what we want to do? And if the answer is yes, then I think they're all going to come back. If the answer is no, then it's like, who's not on board and why not, and how does she end up dealing with that? I think that's more of what it is.
I don't know why wouldn't she want everyone back? I mean, they have a history together. The question is there a bridge and too much water underneath it? That's the general sense because of the way that Russ was, talking, or people on his behalf talking right around next month last year. You know what I mean? Like, so.
Right.
Other
he
than
was
that,
talking for himself. That was the craziest thing.
Well, as I say, like Pete hasn't forgotten.
Man of the Year campaign.
Right. You know what I mean? Like Pete has not forgotten how to coach, and Russ, we saw what happened the last 2 weeks of the season. Which, by the way, like if he was, supposed to sit out and wait for his finger to heal for as long as it probably needed to, like that kind of makes sense, right? Even though he said it's not my finger and all that business. That's why I'm asking, because the general, conventional wisdom, whether it's wise or not, is that these two can't coexist anymore. Run is over. Somebody's going to have to, like, if somebody says Pete's staying, Russ is like, screw it, I'm out of here. Let's get me out of here, or vice versa, right?
I mean, you kind of hit on the main problem, is that they played so well at the end of the year. So, like, might you look at that and say, okay, if this quarterback is healthy, we are still good. And they ran the ball so well at the end. I mean, Rashad Penny, who, like, was given up for dead many times, looked awesome. So could I say to myself, if I was on the Seahawks, like, all right, we'll just do this again next year. Like, we can be good again. And maybe this year was an anomaly. Or maybe for the Seahawks, maybe, I don't know what the market's going to be for Russell Wilson, but what if it's not as good as it was last year? Then do you say, all right, we're not going to trade him for just 1-1 because that doesn't make sense, so we're just going to bring him back? Like, there's so much that goes into it, and, like, I, as someone who does this for a living, I'm having a hard time projecting what's going to happen because I really don't know.
Ian Rapoport, a few minutes left with my colleague from the NFL Media Group. Who next? What next? Are there any next? And those are two ways of me saying, how come Carolina is firing a ton of assistants and Matt Rule's still sitting there? And also the Harbaugh check on whether Rich Bisaccia and Mayock are coaching and general managing for their jobs right now. What do you think?
Well, I would say Houston, too.
Houston. I mean, why, Cully?
David,
come on. Yeah. That would be ridiculous. I mean, because Cully got handed easily one of the worst hands in coaching. I mean, if Urban Meyer got handed one of the greatest hands in coaching, Cully got the worst hand. Like he got 7-2. He got the Doyle Brunson. He got 7-2 off suit, man. You know, and Davis Mills looked terrific by the end of the year.
I thought he did, yeah.
You know, so
I would say if you didn't know what round Davis Mills was drafted in, you'd be talking, not you, but we'd all be talking differently about it.
Of course, yeah. You know, so all right, so Cully might go, I'll give you the floor then on the what next, then Ian.
All right, so we have Seattle. We talked about Cully, possibly they're evaluating all aspects of the football department. So I will keep an eye on that one. You have Mayock and Bisaccia. My understanding is they're still going to do a search, and I'm pretty sure they have to do a search.
Right.
Like I think they have to do a who's going to be our coach search to do it real. You know, not like whatever they did when Gruden was hired,
right? Which
was not really a search. I don't know if Bisaccia comes back. Obviously, it's, you know, I would say he has more of a chance now because the team is good and they're in the playoffs, but definitely not a sure thing. And for Mayock, you know, some limbo as well. Teams in the playoffs, that's good, but, you know, how to deal with so much trouble with so many of his first-round draft picks. I mean, that is, you know, obviously alarming. So, yeah, we'll be keeping an eye on that one as well.
And what about Carolina? I guess last one for you there. What about that?
I think with Carolina, that's one where, you know, Rule has a long contract. I think they still believe he is a good coach. He did fire some assistants and is looking for a new OC, but they haven't really had a quarterback. So, you know, this would have been my argument to bring back Joe Judge, which obviously would have fallen on deaf ears. But how do we know how good a coach Matt Rule is? When he had good quarterback play, he was 3-0, and then he had bad quarterback play and he wasn't as good. So how do you really judge, I think, is one thing the Carolina Panthers are going through.
Ian Rapoport, I appreciate it. Look for my calls and texts. You see him all the time anyway. And then we got you double duty, 4.5 hours Saturday, 4 on Sunday for game day morning.
Pumped.
Thanks.
Playoffs, baby. I'm excited.
And you're psyched about Buck Showalter as the Mets manager? We haven't spoken about that. You got to be, right?
Yeah.
You should be.
For, you know, the next 2 years, I think it's going to be great. That's the show plan.
Take care of yourself, Ian. Thanks for the time. Take care, man.
Okay,
there you go. Ian Rapoport, everybody. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.